All right, what's going on, YouTube? Let's discuss Bradley Pacquiao 3. Um, it's pretty clear that Pacquiao won the fight. Okay, I think the judges got it right. 116, 110. All three judges. First viewing of the fight, I scored it about 115, 111, and then I watched it again Monday morning and scored it about 116, 110. Okay, that's obviously including the knockdowns. I thought both knockdowns were legit. I thought the first knockdown, Bradley was off balanced, but a punch did land. When I first saw it, I thought that it was a slip. When they showed a replay, I saw that a punch did connect. I believe it was a right hand. And you got to give Pacquiao the credit for the knockdown, okay? Because a punch did land, even though it wasn't that clean, even though it wasn't that hard. A punch did land, okay? And you got to count the knockdown, even if he's a little unbalanced, whatever. You got to count it, Too many guys are getting away with slips nowadays, I think Pascal got away with it against Kovalev when Kovalev landed that jab early in that fight. And I thought that was a much cleaner punch than the punch Pacquiao landed against Bradley. And Pascal got away with a slip, even though he got dominated in that fight anyway. I think way too many fights I've seen lately, fighters been getting away with slips. The way that they're reacting to the punches, they're like flopping, or they're making it seem it's like the NBA with flopping, where all these guys were flopping and acting like they were getting hit by elbows and just falling over, and they started fining the NBA players for it. And I think boxing is getting a little bit too ridiculous with the slips, okay? But anyway, so, I thought the scorecard was pretty fair. I wasn't too crazy about the commentary, I think, the commentary was usually, it's poor, just as most HBO fights these days. I just can't stand some of the commentary, Bradley clearly lost the fight, but he should get credited for some of the shots that he is landing, The problem with these fights, all three fights, all right, and this is what I mainly wanted to talk about. I didn't really want to discuss the fight too much itself, because I thought it was a pretty clear win for Manny Pacquiao. All of these fights been very hard to score because they're, a lot of the punches are not really that clean that's landed by both sides. Manny Pacquiao in this fight did land the cleaner, harder punches. He obviously hurt Tim Bradley in this fight a couple times, but neither one of them don't really land as clean as they normally do when they fight other fighters, okay? And obviously that's because of the level of competition they are fighting. These are two of the top one fighters at 147. The top three fighters at 147. As far as resume is concerned, these are the top three. Well, now that Floyd is retired, you say the top two. And I think it's very hard. I think this wasn't as hard as the first fight, obviously. The first fight was a much harder fight to score because the rounds were so close. But I think there was a lot of rounds in this fight that were still swing rounds, But you're used to it at this point, The fights are always going to be close. And even a round, like, there was the seventh round, I think. Was it the first knockdown? I think it was the round of the first knockdown. And Bradley was clearly winning that round, in my opinion. I thought he had the round in the bag, and then he fell over, and I was like, oh, he's not getting that round. You know what I'm saying? It's just, that's the way, like, some of these rounds were. Like, Bradley was doing well. But it's kind of like, more like who's the ring general. It's not really mainly because of clean punching, Bradley never landed against Pacquiao that clean. It was more like he was more active. He was more of the aggressor. He seemed to be in charge of the rounds that he did win because Pacquiao didn't do too much. and you had no choice but to give it to Tim Bradley. You know, all three fights were different to me though, in a way that the first fight you got Tim Bradley. This is the Tim Bradley that we were always used to seeing. You know, the warrior, he's a brawler that can box. Okay, you got that Tim Bradley in the first fight. And even though he was injured in that fight, he still would brawl and mix it up with Pacquiao more often. And Pacquiao's pretty much the same thing. I think he's the better boxer between the two. I think technically he's the better boxer. And when I say technically, I don't mean slick, okay? He's a better defensive fighter than Tim Bradley, okay? And for people that don't believe that, and I know Bradley fought well against Marquez, and I'm going to get to that fight too later in this video, but overall, Pacquiao is the more complete boxer. But there's a lot of similarities between the two. Both of them are usually outworking their opponents, you know, and this is why their first fight was so hard to call, because both of them was so active in the first fight. You know, it was an action-packed back and forth fight. And, you know, the reason why the first fight was so close is because Pacquiao gave up the last 3-4 rounds in the first fight. You know, he actually gassed out in that first fight. Whereas the second fight, Tim Bradley slowed down midway through the fight. You know, he was loading up on every shot. He was literally trying to knock out Manny Pacquiao. And then in the third fight, Teddy Atlas comes in. The game plan was more of Bradley trying to set traps, Bradley trying to fight, you know, not really trying to brawl, not really taking chances. You know, he's being more defensive, and he can fight well that way, but it doesn't make him a great fighter. If he were to fight like the way he fought Pacquiao throughout his whole career, he would have taken some losses by this point, maybe 2 or 3 more losses. It worked well against Marquez, but against guys like Lamar Peterson, Devin Alexander, even Jesse Vargas, you know, he had to be more aggressive to win those fights, and those are why he won those fights. Whereas fights like Marquez, it kind of worked for him well. He fought a different strategy in that fight because he knew Marquez was such a good counterpuncher. On top of that, Marquez is a pretty good brawler at that too, so he didn't want to fall into the trap with Marquez. He fought a very safe fight, and he was in and out. You know, he would land his shots. He was more of a pop shotter in that fight. Didn't do too much combinations. He was just in and out. He fought more of a sneaky fight, and it worked well against Marquez because he's more athletic than Marquez. He's quicker than Marquez. It worked against him. And that brings me to my exact point. A lot of people are saying that Bradley tried to fight Manny Pacquiao like Floyd Mayweather. And I disagree with that. I thought Bradley tried to fight Manny Pacquiao more like the way he fought Marquez. Over the last couple years, after seeing that Bradley and Marquez fight, a lot of people said, you know, Bradley needs to fight more like this, like the way he fought against Marquez, and less like the way he fought against Provodnikov. You know, a lot of people would say that. You know, a lot of people on YouTube said that. A lot of fans say that. Bradley needs to fight more like how he did against Marquez. He can fight that way. And it worked for Marquez. It just wouldn't work against Pacquiao. He didn't fight like the way Floyd did. And he didn't really try to fight like the way Floyd did, in my opinion. You know, Floyd does things. I seen an interview with Tim Bradley recently, and he spoke on that. And he said that he can't do what Floyd do. You know, he acknowledged that Floyd has the reflexes to be able to fight the way that he does. You know, Floyd backs himself into the ropes, and he sets you up that way. You know, and I didn't really see any check left hooks, or I didn't see Floyd or Bradley holding on to Pacquiao and tying up with Pacquiao. You know, whenever Pacquiao got the rhythm going and everything. Bradley's not one of those type of guys, and he wasn't doing it. He doesn't fight like Floyd, in my opinion, and I don't think he was really trying to fight like Floyd. You know, I think he was trying to be a little too strategic, and I think he was trying to follow that game plan throughout the fight, even though it wasn't really working. Normally, when Bradley goes in there with the plan to try to be a boxer and it's not really working, he goes on plan B and he goes back to brawling. He didn't do that with this fight. He continued to go with their game plan, which I believe which was their game plan. And he fought a very calm and relaxed fight, regardless of the outcome. Even when he got knocked down, he continued to stay posed and relaxed. And that is why it didn't work in this fight, because you can't be that way with Pacquiao. You know, the first fight was so close. You were so aggressive in the first fight, it made the fight more competitive. It made it closer. And you beat so many other guys by being, you know, outworking them and being the aggressor, not being the better, superior boxer. You know, and even Sean Porter, he said that he spoke to Tim Bradley before he fought Devin Alexander. And he said, you know, Bradley told him to do, this is the blueprint. You got to rough house and you got to rough up Devin Alexander. This is the way you have to beat him. You're not going to beat him by just trying to outbox him. You know, and this is why Sean Porter had success against Devin Alexander because, you know, I mean, he did a little bit more wrestling in that fight, but you're not going to beat him simply off just outboxing him. Sean Porter is just not one of those guys. It's like Sean Porter switching up his style and trying to be a slick fighter. It's not going to work, you know? So I think Bradley does have those skills and those boxing skills. He's capable of doing that. But against certain fighters, he needed to be the worker, you know? He never was landing cleanly that much against Pacquiao in any of the fights, you know? But being so active in the first fight, it made the first fight so close. And even early in the second fight, when he was loading up, he was landing more, he was doing more in the first fight, but he tired out so quickly, and it was an easy fight for Pacquiao for the rest of the fight. All right, so that's my take on it. You know, I think Teddy Atlas tried to make him go the route where he was fighting. He stuck to that plan against Marquez. I think Bradley was trying to be like the way he was against Marquez, not really like the way Floyd was. I mean, I believe that they took some, you know, certain things that they saw in the Floyd Mayweather fight. I think they try to implement it in this fight. But Bradley is aware that he's not Floyd Mayweather. He's not going to do what Floyd Mayweather does. There's plenty of other fighters that can fight like Floyd a lot better than Tim Bradley is able to do it. So that's just my opinion on what I think Bradley tried to do in this fight that didn't really work for him. I personally think that Bradley was doing well when he was throwing combinations and he was going to the body. For Bradley to not really go to the body like the way that he normally does and try to win a fight without doing so against Manny Pacquiao is not going to really work. A few times that I've seen him throw a jab and then come in and go to the body, he seemed to be pretty successful with it. He just didn't do it enough. Pacquiao, what I liked from him the most was the right hook. Okay, he seemed to be so quick. Pacquiao was just too quick for Tim Bradley. He actually made Bradley look slow. Not saying that Bradley's one of the most fastest fighter in the sport, but he's pretty quick. He's quicker than a lot of the guys he's faced. And he looked slow against Manny Pacquiao, you know. And I think at times when he tried to counter Manny, you know, Manny saw it coming, and Manny just picked him apart. He outboxed him. Manny looked as good as any other Manny Pacquiao fight to me. I think he didn't look good against Floyd, but he looked good in all of his other fights. He looked good in the Bradley rematch, the fight with Algieri, the fight with Rios, even the fight against Marquez when he got knocked out. He looked good. I mean, he was beating the shit out of Marquez until he got knocked out. So I don't know if Pacquiao's going to retire. I mean, I don't think he will. I think that was another way of trying to boost this fight. I don't think he's really going to retire. If he doesn't retire, I know a lot of people want him to fight Terence Crawford, which is a toss-up. A lot of people think that Terence Crawford is going to go in there and beat Manny Pacquiao easily, and I don't think that's the case. I really don't know who's going to win that fight if they were to fight. But I don't know. Terence Crawford, I might even still say 60-40 for Pacquiao if they were to fight. I'm not sure if Terence Crawford, I can't sit here and tell you that Terence Crawford would actually win that fight, especially because Pacquiao is still fighting on a high level. I don't know what Pacquiao is going to do, but there's plenty of fights out there for him. I doubt he fights a PBC guy. If he doesn't fight a PBC guy, him or Tim Bradley should both fight Kell Brook. I don't see why that fight can't happen. As far as Tim Bradley, fight Kell Brook, fight Jesse Vargas rematch is probably going to happen. I don't see why the Miguel Cotto fight can't happen. I know Miguel Cotto, the last thing I heard was him possibly fighting, what's this guy named? James Kirkland. I don't know why he can't fight Tim Bradley, That would be an awesome fight. And whether there's a catch weight involved in that fight, I doubt Cotto will come all the way back down to 147. But at least in that fight, I don't think size would be a factor in that fight if they were to fight. That would be a good fight. And I think that would be a pay-per-view worth paying for. I think that would be a worthy pay-per-view fight. Both of those guys fought a lot of they fought some of the same fighters. Did they fight some of the same? I don't know, but they seem like a matchup that should have happened by now. It just seems like a matchup that makes sense. So, I mean, that's just my thoughts on it. Pacquiao should stick with Teddy Atlas. The game plan just didn't work in this fight. But I don't think that game plan that they went with this fight, Bradley would fight every single fight like that. I think he just tried to do it in this fight, and it didn't work out for him. If he were to fight Jesse Vargas again, I think he should fight him the exact same way he fought him in the first fight. He was being more aggressive in the first fight. In the first fight with Jesse Vargas. So I think he should do the same thing. But he should definitely stick with Teddy Atlas. I don't see why he shouldn't. He didn't win. I know he did better in the first fight when he was with Joel Diaz, but he fought a different fight in the first fight, and I think, he went with a different, a lot of people don't think he won the first fight. So, I think he went with a different game plan and he stuck with the game plan and it just didn't work out for him. Pacquiao is just the superior boxer at the end of the day. He's the better boxer, and there's no need to watch any more fights between these two. All right. And I believe that's all. I'm gonna do a video on Joshua and Martin too, so be on the lookout for that. And I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.